TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, the Russian Air Force has reportedly thwarted an Israeli aerial operation in Syria against an Iranian shipment of advanced weaponry. With less than 2 days ahead of the seemingly inevitable dissolution of the Israeli parliament, Jerusalem's political rivals are gearing up for their respective campaigns and are making every perceived effort to distance themselves from possible blame for the country's third round of unprecedented elections. Russian forces have entered the Syrian city of Raqqa, the former de facto capital of the Islamic State, after U.S. forces pulled out from the area. With less than 2 days ahead of the seemingly inevitable dissolution of the 22nd Israeli parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew, Jerusalem's political rivals are gearing up for their respective campaigns and are making separately every perceived effort to distance themselves from possible blame for the country's third round of unprecedented elections. Former IDF Chief of Staff and Blue and White Chairman Benny Gantz used a faction meeting in Jerusalem yesterday to call upon his main rival, incumbent Prime Minister and Likud Chairman Benjamin Netanyahu, to place Israel over his own personal interests. Gantz sought to attribute full responsibility on Netanyahu for Jerusalem's political deadlock, alleging that the longest-serving Israeli leader was exploiting the post of Prime Minister for the sake of maintaining immunity from legal prosecution.
עשרות שעות ישבנו בחדרי המשא ומתן. נתניהו נשאר עם אותה המנטרה, בלוק החסינות, דרישה להיות ראשון, וגם וטו מוחלט בהתקדמות על קווי יסוד. אפס זמן על מהות. טילי טילים של מילים על מבנים מורכבים של חסינות ונבצרות. ולמרות זאת, גם היום עוד לא אפסו הסיכויים למנוע את הבחירות המיותרות והעיקרות האלה. נתניהו צריך להעמיד את ישראל לפני נתניהו, לעשות מעשה.
In spite of the long list of accusations leveled at the Israeli premier, Benny Gantz repeated his call for Benjamin Netanyahu to immediately forego his eligibility for immunity from prosecution. Gantz stressed that once Netanyahu publicly pledges to waive parliamentary immunity from prosecution, the blue and white political bloc would immediately recommit itself to negotiate with the ruling Likud party for a unity government coalition that would spare Israel from yet another round of elections.
אני חוזר וקורא לראש הממשלה. אני חוזר היום על מה שאמרתי לך, לנציגיך מהיום הראשון של המשא ומתן. אם תוותר על החסינות, אנחנו פרטנרים לתחילתו של שיח. גררת אותנו לבחירות כבר פעמיים בגלל החסינות.
Gantz also sought to respond to those who support Netanyahu regardless of the latter's legal predicament. He stressed that the State of Israel, which was founded in the spirit of the biblical prophets of Israel and on the basis of justice, cannot accept a prime minister who has been indicted on concrete corruption charges.
במדינת ישראל שקמה על יסודות הצדק ברוח נביאי ישראל, ראש הממשלה חייב להוות דוגמה לציבור. ובוודאי שחייב להיות פנוי לעסוק בענייני מדינה. זהו גם עניין ערכי ונורמטיבי, ולא רק סוגיה פרקטית של תאריכים בלוח השנה. במדינה מתוקנת, ראש ממשלה לא יכול להיות נאשם בשוחד. אנו ניצבים בפני אתגרים משמעותיים מבית ומחוץ, כדאי שנתחיל לטפל בהם.
The Prime Minister's ruling Likud party immediately rejected Gantz's proposal, but evaded the question of whether Netanyahu would seek immunity from prosecution. Instead, the Likud sought to lay the blame for Jerusalem's political impasse on Blue and White and its chairman Benny Gantz. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced in a statement that the Likud would hold a party primary for its leadership if new general parliamentary elections are ultimately called upon. In spite of the announcement, which was warmly welcomed by the Prime Minister's main internal Likud party rival, Gideon Sa'ar, domestic media reports highlighted efforts by Netanyahu's political allies to assure his continued leadership over the Likud. Speaking at a special meeting in Jerusalem this morning of the Israel Allies Foundation, however, Knesset member Sa'ar responded to a question on whether he would support Prime Minister Netanyahu during the anticipated 2020 election if the latter wins the Likud primary.
במילה אחת, התשובה היא כן. במשפט אחד, בכוונתי להתמודד ולנצח. ובשני משפטים, תמיד צריך להתמודד במטרה לנצח ולכבד את ההכרעה הדמוקרטית שמתקבלת.
Sa'ar, who currently serves as a member of the Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, cited 3 separate polls that were published in the past week, which found that if Sa'ar were to replace Netanyahu as Likud chairman, the right-wing ultra-Orthodox bloc would grow to between 56 to 57 seats.
אם ייבחר לראשות הליכוד, הוביל אותו לניצחון ולהקמת ממשלה בראשות הליכוד. אתמול התפרסם כבר סקר שלישי באותו שבוע שמעיד בצורה ברורה ביותר שגוש הימין גדל אם אני עומד בראשו ושאני מביא קולות למחנה הלאומי מהצד השני. זה דבר דרמטי, בעיקר כשזה קורה עוד אפילו טרם המועמדות, בוודאי טרם בחירתי. ולכן אני משוכנע שאם ננצח ועמוד בראש הליכוד, הוביל לניצחון גדול של הליכוד ולהקמת ממשלה בראשות הליכוד.
It is important to know that while under Sa'ar's leadership, the right-wing ultra-Orthodox bloc would gain additional seats, the poll he referred to also found that the Likud under Benjamin Netanyahu's leadership would secure 2 mandates more than Gideon Sa'ar. Turning now to Israel's northern neighbor Syria, where 2 Russian Su-35 fighter jets reportedly thwarted an Israeli airstrike against an Iranian weapons shipment over the weekend. According to the Russian military aviation blog Aviapro, an Israeli aerial fighter wing that aimed to target an Iranian weapons shipment at the T4 military airbase in southern Syria was forced to abort its mission when Russian fighter jets were scrambled to the area in an apparent effort to thwart the anticipated Israeli strike. The report, which was widely republished by both Israeli and international media, further claimed that the Iranian shipment included advanced surface-to-air missile systems with medium to long-range capabilities. It is important to know that the report was published a day after 2 separate civilian aircraft traveled from Tehran to Syria's T4 airbase and the Damascus International Airport. While both the Russian and Israeli militaries maintain a policy of not discussing operational matters with the media overtly, senior military sources who spoke with TV7 on condition of anonymity sought to refute the report, which they insisted is inconsistent with the Israeli-Russian coordination mechanism that aims to assure deconfliction in Syria between the 2 respective militaries. Meanwhile, Russian forces have entered the Syrian city of Raqqa, the former de facto capital of the Islamic State. The Russian entry highlights one of the plainest examples of how Moscow has filled the vacuum created since the United States decided to pull out its forces from much of the war-torn country. An official statement by Moscow's defense ministry underscored that Russian troops provided medical assistance and humanitarian aid bundles, which, according to footage provided, were printed with both the Russian and Syrian flags with a slogan underneath reading, "Russia is with you." A Russian defense ministry officer who accompanied the troops' entry claimed that the Syrian population warmly welcomed the Russian assistance and accused the United States of being responsible for atrocities that were allegedly committed during the battle against the Islamic State.
Инфраструктура Ракки была полностью уничтожена в ходе проводившейся международной коалицией, возглавляемой США, операции по ее освобождению. Жертвами неизбирательных авиационных и артиллерийских ударов стали тысячи мирных жителей.
There was no immediate response by the United States to the Russian allegations. Nevertheless, an American military official who spoke to TV7 said that Russia's ridiculous propaganda knows no bounds. Thank you for watching us. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and the peace and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have a Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.